I have already been laughing with this human being. He is so close to my heart. I had an experience probably about a year ago, and I reached out to him. I was having a tough time because my daughter she had found the arts, and she was so excited about it. She wanted to be a part of, acting and singing and dancing and all this stuff, and her school didn't have the funding for it. Well, I reached out to my buddy, who you guys are going to meet. He's been on this show before. But I reached out to him and I told him the story, and he went into action immediately. He took his company, which helps people to be able to tell their stories through books, through speaking all over the world, helps people to be famous. And he said, look, what I'm going to do is I'm going to take a portion of every single thing that we're doing right now, and I'm going to send it on to your daughter and make sure that she has the musical. And guess what? They funded the musical. He doesn't even live in this country. That means that he's cooler than all of us. But he took his time, his energy, and his heart and said, look, I want to take action right now. This man not only does that, but also helps people to become best-selling authors, to become some of the top speakers in the world. And he takes the light that he has and he shines it on every other person. This is one of the most well-connected people that you'll ever meet, Mr. Corey Poirier, and he is unbelievable. I'm so excited to be able to share him with you today. And he has a new project that we're going to be talking about. So why don't we get this party started?
Cause we believin', it's for certain. We put the work in. We ain't stopped just because it's hurting. Right before your eyes, so it's coming to no surprise. The takeover is televised. Over and over and over again. Make no mistake, we continue to win. Defeat never known, cause I will not lose. They wanna mimic my moves, but can't walk in my shoes.
Corey Poirier, this is the thing that I didn't say because I want them to understand your heart, but a multiple TEDx speaker, host of the Enlightened Passenger Show, founder of Blue Talks, Barnes & Noble, Amazon, Wall Street Journal, and USA Today bestseller, Mr. Corey Poirier. Welcome to the show, my man.
Thank you ever so much, Mr. Kelly Cardenas. I'm absolutely stoked to be here and super stoked to see what this conversation reveals, holds, and happy to make some magic happen, as I like to say.
I think that friends are the biggest thing. And my friend, we got to give a shout out to our friend, Jamie Hartnett. And Jamie introduced us years ago. And I heard a saying that said, get to know people before you ever need them. I can't remember who said it, so I'm going to take credit for it. You could quote me on that. And I got to know you just as I was stepping out and saying, I want to go into the speaking world. But I hadn't made the decision yet, hadn't gone all in, but I had no idea that I had already met a friend that takes people and literally launches them into the stratosphere. How did you get started on that journey? And then tell us about the Enlightened Passenger also.
So great question. And yes, definitely a shout out to Jamie as well. And I will tell you, so this is not to detract from you creating the quote, Kelly, because I believe sometimes there's quotes that inspire us and we could say something similar. For instance, I've been saying one for a while where it's like a question saying, what if the journey is really the destination? Now it's a question mark. That's probably a similar quote to somebody else, but it doesn't mean I haven't created that version of the quote. I think we did the same, but I'll tell you who has the quote that I think triggered it is the late Zig Ziglar. So the late Zig Ziglar had a quote that I stuck with me for years, and he said, dig your well before you're thirsty. And it's the same kind of idea, right? Like put in the effort before you need it, or build a relationship before you need it, that type of thing. It's just like a job, right? Like go out and when you already have a job, that's probably the best time to build up your resume and build up like your extracurricular activities because you don't need another job yet. Or for me, I launched my speaking career while I was still working in a corporate role, making 6 figures-ish. And so I built my speaking career before I needed it. So when I think of Ziglar, I always think of build your well before you're thirsty.
Well, I think it's amazing too, man, because, getting to know you as a human being. We spent some time in San Diego. My wife and I did an interview for you. I was on your podcast before I had a podcast. And if you haven't got a chance, it's the Enlightened Passenger Show. Am I correct? That's the podcast that you have? Have we changed the name?
I have a few podcasts, but that's the one I would direct people to.
That's how you know you're big time, Corey. That's like having 2 phones. That's when you know you're important. But I tell you, if you haven't checked out Corey Poirier, I'm going to tell you this right off the bat. The I comes before the R. So this is where I was telling him I was messing up on it. But the I comes before the R. But make sure you check out every one of his podcasts, his radio shows. The reach that this man has, Corey, it's unbelievable, that amount of reach, but you stay so humble. We were just at Secret Knock. You're not pounding your chest, but there's so many people in that room that if they would have taken the time to befriend Corey Poirier, it would have changed their life. How can telling someone's story change their life?
Well, thank you so much. And I'm going to give a shout out to my late grandfather, who was a carpenter with a grade 3 education. And when I was growing up, and this kind of ties into the story that can change your life, but when I was kind of growing up, he built a fiberglass space shuttle replica to scale. Somebody just sent a picture to me yesterday on it. And he built that as a grade 3 education carpenter, bag of nails and a hammer. And he built this thing out of fiberglass. And the reason I bring this up, Kelly, is he never told a soul. So nobody knew he did it. We had to bring it up for him to talk about it. And then when we did, he would blush and he would be so honored, but he had a hard time sharing it. Well, he always said to me, basically, there's lots of different variations of this, but never get too big for your britches or what have you. And I think what happened is just the witness of his example helped me in that way, not take myself and whatever I'm doing too seriously. Having said that, I also had to battle that, Kelly, because I grew up in a small town where we were taught to say yes to everybody, but also not to talk about our achievements. And so I had to battle that as somebody who, here's my thinking on this, and I know people still struggle with this. I realized this was a game changer for me. Not that I could make more money, not that I could have more success, but that I could impact more lives if more people knew what I was doing. So eventually I realized I needed to some degree, toot my own horn, because nobody else will, if I wanted to reach more people. And so, for example, maybe say he's a multiple-time TEDx speaker in my bio, because it might open another door that allows me to reach a new group and impact their lives. So I think you're doing a disservice sometimes when people don't know your achievements. So I just wanted to put a stamp into that. But the other side is using your story to impact lives. I mean, ironically, and I know we'll talk about this, and I don't mean to jump ahead, but this new book, The Enlightened Passenger, is a story, a fictional parable. And I built it around a story instead of my other book over here, The Book of Why, which is a how-to. You know, those are two different things. Now, in the how-to book, I still serve with stories, but the fictional book is totally different in the fact that it's characters. It's a fictional story. And so for me, I think it's all about story. So I don't start writing a book unless a story's involved. Now, like I said, it could be a how-to book. I think a big mistake some authors make that write how-to books is they don't wrap it around stories. And if you want we can dive into how to make it work with stories. But if you want the backup to that, the proof is look at Think and Grow Rich, and look at How to Win Friends and Influence People, and look at Success Through a Positive Mental Attitude, which was also co-authored by Think and Grow Rich, and look at How to Stop Worrying and Start Living. Those, by the way, 2 of those are Dale Carnegie, 2 of those are Napoleon Hill. Both of those are master storytellers. The end result is How to Win Friends has impacted probably 30, 40 million people. And that's not including used books. I'm just talking accounted for sales. They say Think and Grow Rich is over 100 million. So what I'm saying is, Kelly, they both used how-to books, but they use story to reach people with those how-to books. And so to me, that's the power of story. There's a reason why The Alchemist, which is a parable, Celestine Prophecy. Why are these books, why have they sold? The Alchemist, I think, is 250 or 300 million copies. The Celestine is 40 million that we know of. Like, how do these books reach so many people? I think the common thread is they are masterful storytellers. So that to me is the power of story.
So how do you filter this though? Because I was just having a conversation with my brother the other day, and there used to be, just like TV, there used to be almost a process that you had to get to it. And I'm a product of this. And then, Like back in the day when I would watch Different Strokes, Arnold and Willis, there was a gate that happened, and I wanted to break that gate. And then though, sometimes because it is not that hard to be able to publish a book, then you end up with a lot of books that sometimes shouldn't be published. Right. How do you have that conversation with somebody? Everybody's story matters, but not everybody's story should be in a book, and not every single person should be writing one.
Yeah, so I think I would divide the two there, and I kind of snicker because now it's going to be more so with AI and everything else. Like people are going to write their story based on what AI can find about them online, which is then not a real story with any heart behind it. That's for another day, because that's a whole different conversation. And I have my own personal beliefs on that. And in fact, I'm doing a TEDx this month with another lady who's one of our clients, and her talk is about what happens to humanity when AI takes over creation, because her feeling is arts and writing and history, and I mean, not history, but writing and entertainment and all that stuff brought us out of the dark ages. And she worries what happens whenever AI takes over all that. So that's a whole different conversation. The other side that you said is I would maybe divide those two, Kelly. So I believe everybody has a great story, and not everybody should be telling their story themselves, and not everybody should be telling their story the way they're telling it. But here's the caveat. I think if that's the case, if they still want to tell the story, then what they need to do is some form of record it on a device and then go to somebody who's an editor or somebody who creates stories or a ghostwriter and say, can you write this for me? So I believe, to your point, everybody has a story. And I also believe that story can be told in a compelling way. But to finish what you said but I don't think everybody has the ability to tell it in that compelling way that it needs to be told. So I actually think their story still should be in print, but the caveat is I don't think it necessarily is always them that should be writing it. And by the way, there's no shame in not writing it. I'll give you a great example is Lisa Nichols. Lisa Nichols from The Secret, who is on Super Soul Sunday, who's been on Oprah, has 2 New York Times best-selling books. Lisa didn't write those books from start to finish herself. So when I did an interview with her about that, she said, this is the story, she said it publicly, that she got paid millions in an advance. And then what she did was she put that money in an account and said, can't touch this account until I know if I can write this book. And the reason was because Lisa's dyslexic. So when she writes a book, it like writing it on the screen doesn't feel the same way. So she said she had a coworker, or I think it was like an assistant, who held space for her 12 hours a day while she sat there and wrote. And at the end, she realized she wasn't the person to write the book. So then she thought, well, wait, now I have to give this money back. That sucks. But then she realized, she said, you know what? One thing I am good at, though, is I'm a good interview. So what she did, Kelly, which is brilliant in so many levels, is she hired somebody to come into their studios, interview Lisa, take her story out of her. They transcribed it and made it into a great book. But then what she also did was use that footage for courses as well. So she went one step further. Wow. But my point is, here's Lisa Nichols with 2 New York Times best-selling books. I would argue one of the best speaking storytellers of all time, almost always makes the top 25 list of speakers, and still didn't write her own book because it's not in her wheelhouse. So what I'm saying is there's no shame in not writing your own book. As long as it's legitimately your story. Don't, fabricate your story. But as long as it's your story, I don't care who writes it, it still needs to be out there. But again, to your point, not everybody's story probably should be out the way it is. And I don't think, here's the other side of that, I don't think everybody should be releasing the books there, because we see a lot of books that aren't their story, and they go, I'm going to write a 30 or 40 page PDF book about how to sell books, so that way I can become the expert on that. But then you go read the book and it's, what's a nice way to say it? A pile of crap. I've said this to people that say, there's the other side. People write a great book, but are perfectionists and never release it. And to them, I would say, my mediocre book that's out changing lives is having more impact than your perfect book that you never release. So I think there's both sides, right? Like, I think it's important to release the book when it's ready, and maybe even before it's ready, because you can change it. But I also think it's important to be real about, is this book the type of book that the world needs? I will tell you this, Kelly, some people find it fascinating. Out of 28, 29 books that I'm involved in, I'll use those words, some are co-author books, they're all different scenarios. I've only actually released 3 that I wrote start to finish myself. One of them is called Standing Ovations from Every Customer, which was a customer service book that was a parable I wrote years ago. Never sold a copy on purpose. It was the giveaway. And all books should have a reason. I had it. My end goal was to get bookings, so I sent it to meeting planners. So that, having said that, this book here, which people can see probably on the screen, which is my older book, The Book of Why and How, and the new book, The Enlightened Passenger, are the only two books that I've written from start to finish to release to the market. So what I'm saying is, out of 20 some books over that many years, why did I not release a whole bunch more? It's because, to me, it goes back to what we said earlier. The world doesn't need every book that's out there now. And I felt if I can't bring a book to the world that they need, the book's not ready yet. So that was a long tangent on that. Maybe even a rant.
Well, what about too, Corey, when you talk about the AI part, this is interesting to me because I think that the AI, this is just my perception, is that it will bring back a renaissance of true art. And so many people are scared that it's going to take away their jobs. I think it's going to create such a division because so many people are just going to that and utilizing that it's going to bring back this renaissance of, again, like true art, like people that touch it and feel it. And you're going to be able to tell such a difference. What's your thought on that?
Well, I will say this to your point. I do feel like and I will say this, I think there's more of a divide. Now, again, it's going to change with the generation, generationally. Like my son might be more open to AI than my uncle is. But even on social media, I'm seeing a lot more. I don't know the best way to say this, Kelly, so sometimes we need to be unfiltered. But I'm seeing a lot more when people see AI posts, like a picture from AI saying some form of yuck than saying, wow, that's awesome. And so to your point, so what I mean by that too is, people like, somebody will be look what you can do in AI in 7 seconds. Then somebody says, yeah, but why do the toes look like they came from a goblin? It's still not there yet. But the other side to that is that what I mean by this, the yuck thing, is I think what that's going to do is it's going to do what you just said. It's going to drive a certain portion of people saying, I don't care what you think, this is efficient, I like it, I can get it out quick, and I know what I'm doing, blah, blah, blah. And then I think you're going to have another crew that says, oh my God, I long for real stuff again. And I'm not rebelling against AI in the sense of physically, but saying I'm not going to, like this girl I mentioned, her name is Kira Brinton, who's doing the TEDx with me. Her brand, her company, all of her books, so she works with authors, and she won't release a book using AI, and all of her books say something to the form of written by a real author on the book. And so she's actively, and she uses AI, by the way, to do stuff. Like, for example, if she needs, I need to find out some background for my interview on this with this person, she might use AI to search it. But she doesn't use AI to write a book or something very creative. So to your point, Kelly, I think we're going to see a divide. And I don't know what percentage it's going to be because I think the age will factor in. But I think you're going to see a divide, to your point, about people that not rebel against physically, but rebel against the idea of consuming only AI and actually say, I want a real book. I want to know this book was written by somebody. And I want to know this art was created by somebody's hands. And I want to physically touch something that was created by another human. I do think we're going to have that renaissance, or whatever you want to call it. I think that's going to happen. I do.
I think that the renaissance of service is going to happen too. And you're a testament to this, Corey, because the way that you treat people, I've been to Blue Talks. And I got a chance to be there with you at UCLA. And I had never been to UCLA. And then because of you, I got a chance to do a talk there. And it was amazing. But the way that you make people feel, I think, is such a huge point of difference. Like, why has that been so important? Like with the Blue Talks, it's not just about you filtering through all these people. These people got positive feedback. They got if you get a chance to be able to do a Blue Talk, we'll have your link and things like that. It's not everybody that, but it's curated, but you make people feel, Corey, different in your place. Why is that so important to you?
Honestly, it probably has to do with the why Blue Talks get started in the first place. So the why behind Blue Talks goes back to whenever I first started as a speaker 20 some years ago. And I jumped out, and this is the way I would describe it, Kelly, is that I was in sales for 10 plus years, corporate sales. So I thought I can sell myself. And so I jumped into speaking, and I thought I'm going to build it and they're all going to come. And in fact, I even heard somebody, a couple, husband and wife team, through the National Speakers Association, there's CD back, or CD, I think it was back at the time, saying if you build it, they come. That it's so easy with speaking. By the way, my experience hasn't been that way since I started. But I said, okay, I'm going to build it and they're going to come. And now I jokingly say I started building it, but nobody even heard the hammer. I just kept on building and nobody was coming. And so I had to build my speaking career through tooth and nails in a lot of ways. Like, it was not as easy as I was led to believe. And so I remember early on specifically saying, if I can ever make this easier for one other person, I want some of that. And then so I built my career. One of the things I'm really big on, Kelly, is that, and again, a lot of this is not meant to be a knock on somebody else or me going. Are you still there, by the way, Kelly?
Yeah, I'm here. We're
Cool.
focused on you, man.
You just appeared in the screen, and I thought, I hope I'm still live. Okay, cool. So this is not meant to be a knock on anybody else, but one of the things that is my little pet peeve, as Shelly, my wife, will gladly tell you, is when I see people saying they'll put a photo up on a Facebook ad and have themselves next to a vehicle they don't own, and then say, let me show you how to get this vehicle I don't own and make the $1 million I don't have. And so I really struggle with that. So for anything that you see me teach, and this is going to anybody that sees me teach anywhere, it'll always be something that I've overdone it, meaning like I've spent more time than I needed to before. So podcasting and authors, like books, like author training, and helping people launch podcasts, that's in my wheelhouse. I've been doing podcasting for almost 20 years. The author side, we've helped 400 people become best-selling authors. To this day, I still don't have courses on either of those. The author one, we have one course we did with other people. I even brought in other experts. But the only real one that we teach is we help you become an expert, and then we have a speaking program. The reason I say that is I put 20 years into speaking before I went all in on teaching people how to speak. And so it's important to me that I've lived it. I've gotten paid, literally made six figures at an event. Like that was important to me before I went to other people and said, let me show you how to do this. So I say all that to say, because you asked, why is it important to treat people the way I do? Well, it's because I started 20-some years ago as that guy that nobody could help. And I say nobody could help. I mean, I just didn't have mentors. So there was nobody really to help me. And this is the thing I don't think it's as much the case anymore, but a lot of people that were speaking were maybe, I don't know the best word to put on this, but like the pretend to be speaker, like they had sought after on everywhere, all their materials. And then when I talked to them, I say, oh, it's so easy. It's such a piece of cake. And never said a word to me about how to do any of this. And then 5 years later came to me and said, how are you doing this? And then told me, you know what, I've been doing this for years, but I haven't been getting paid or this or some form of that. And so in fairness, it's probably good I didn't have mentors, because I think a lot of them were struggling too, but just couldn't say it. And I don't knock them for that. That's not a bad thing. They just couldn't say it. It doesn't matter that they couldn't. What matters is eventually they did. But for me, I had to learn it in the trenches because I couldn't really find an active mentor. And where I was in that back then, Atlantic Canada, it's a small area. And back then we weren't as connected online. There was no Facebook, by the way, when I started. So we weren't as connected. So it's like, how do I reach those mentors? You'd have to pay them so much money that I wouldn't have been able to back then. And they would have been in Vegas or something. And I would have been in this little part of Canada. So I didn't have mentors. And I said, I want to change that if I can. And then I'm going to say 10 years ago, people started coming to me saying, how are you getting paid to speak so much and so often? So we started teaching that in a self-study program. Like, here's 12 weeks, have fun, come to us with questions if you have them. Then we launched a How to Land Your Branded Talk. Obviously, the most popular of those was TEDx. But we did that, and we had a lot of success. And still at the same time, it was still self-study. Like, we would show you exactly how to do it. And we had a really good track record of people using the system and landing their branded talks. But then about 4.5 years ago, people started coming to me saying, I wish there was a spiritual TEDx stage. And the other group was saying, I wish there was a done for you where I could show up at an event, but you do everything for us. And that's when we launched Blue Talks. And then to finish this whole kind of story about how it all worked is basically that's when we launched Blue Talks. And the idea, and this is why I believe it's so important to treat people in a certain way, especially when it might be their first talk ever, is because I wanted to become, in some ways through a company, but their mentor, to teach them what nobody was teaching me when I first started. So why it's important to me to treat people well. I mean, it's in my blood, I think. My grandfather, carpenter, and he ran it as a carpentry company. He lived on referrals. That was important to me. And I understood the only way to do that is to be authentic and treat clients right. Not, try to make them think you are, but to treat clients right. So that's the why, in the sense that it was built into me probably. But the other side is because I've been there and I know how hard it is. And I know how frustrating it is to get on a stage and not be ready, or get on a stage and have no support. So I think it's a bit of both of those.
But how is it? This is the age-old question, right? So Corey became Corey because he went on stage and sweat a lot and didn't know what to say and didn't have the mentors. How do you then become a mentor and maybe shorten that lifespan but end up with the same product? And this is a tough thing because I joked the other day saying that if don't get distracted by my joy and my smile. If you think you can do this, lace up these size 10s and walk a mile. You know what I'm saying?
Right.
Like where every person that sees you and they see you speak and they see your books and they see you TED Talk and they see you all around the world with all these people interviewing, I could tell you there's probably quite a few that come up to you and be like, yo, Corey, I want to do what you do. Can I just get the shortcut real quick?
Yeah, and I'll give you the shortcut. In fact, again, I don't take myself that seriously, so sometimes it takes me off guard. I did an interview this week, and this person said, I want to be you when I grow up. And I was like, oh, that's so cute. Like, and I don't mean cute like blowing it off. I mean like, wow, like I never thought about that, because I wanted to be somebody whenever I grew up. When I looked at, for me, I was into music, so I wanted to be a rock star when I grew up. And by the way, I went down that path. I put CDs out. I did a tour, and I ultimately realized that I loved it, but at the same time, I didn't want to always never know if I was ever going to be able to pay the bills, because that's that lifestyle. That's the rock star sort of lifestyle. But the shortcut to me, Kelly, and so A, it's what we help people do, but B, you can do it on your own. I did it on my own. It just took longer, but it's still a shortcut. If you want the I mean, there's a whole bunch of different shortcuts as far as if you want to get on stages as a speaker versus if you want to become an expert. There's a lot of shortcuts. What I would say is, I mean, a quick one is find the person that is doing it at the best and highest level. Like somebody like you've kind of, Greg Reed became your mentor, right? So find somebody that's doing it at the highest level and figure out a way you can serve them, not get from them, serve them, so that eventually they want to serve you back. I mean, that again, it's still probably not a shortcut because it's going to take time. You know, people ask all the time, how do I get to interview Brian Austin Green or Lisa Nichols or Les Brown? Well, I'm sorry, but there's not a shortcut. The shortcut was I met them. Now, Les is a bit different. I was through Les. I built a relationship with somebody else who then built the relationship for me with Les. Yeah. But there's some that I built a relationship with myself, but it could have taken 2 years. Like Mark Victor Hansen. You know, I interviewed him 3 times, and then the 4th time he said, you know, we want to do more podcasts for our new book. Can you connect us with some podcasters? Well, the next day, Kelly, nobody knew in the background. I didn't say, hey, look at me do this. I connected Mark with about 25 shows. Some of these had 3 million listeners. And I think he was floored because he's like, Corey, okay, you got to slow down. There's too many now. Like, that's a lot of shows. But my point is I did that. And then I said, no, I'm happy to do it. Plus the people that had him on the show were happy to have Mark Victor Hansen on their show. Everybody won. And then I moved on and I never thought much of it. And then they put out a book and then I did some more stuff like that. And I never once asked Mark for anything. And then one time I asked Mark for a colleague how much he would charge to do a certain thing, like a Zoom type, this pre-COVID or during COVID, a Zoom type training. And Mark said, and it was a healthy price. And then we were doing an event a little while later at MIT, and we asked Mark for the same thing. And he basically said some version of, Corey, I can't charge you. You've done too much for me. And then I talked to him and he agreed to eventually take a little bit. But my point is I had to fight for that. And then when I'm putting the new book out, I asked Mark and he said, send the book to me. And he gave me an endorsement. He said, I don't do this very often these days, but he said, I can't say no to you. What I'm saying, Kelly, is what people don't see is the 2 years of building a relationship without ever asking Mark for anything and serving and actually serve. And by the way, serving because I believe in the work that Mark Victor Hansen does. And for those that don't know who Mark is, Mark was the co-creator of Chicken Soup for the Soul. I mean, he can get these things on his own and the relationships he has. By the way, we just did an interview with him. You'll like this. This is not even aired yet. We just did an interview with him. And I don't know if you know this, but they're working with your mentor on his new book, John Paul DiGiorgio.
Yes.
So they're working with John on a book. And Mark was saying, you know, we got to connect you whenever it comes out and make sure we help get John some extra exposure. But what I'm saying is, as you know, it's not easy. You can't reach out to John and say, hey, I want to get you on my show. But what I'm saying is, and I'm not saying it'll happen, by the way, and I'm not putting any eye into it happening, but there's a better chance with Mark saying, hey, John, you should go on Corey's show. And how did that happen? It's because I built a relationship with Mark. I know, again, this was a tangent, but to me, the shortcut is putting in the time. But anyway, if you want, so people still want hacks though, right? I know this, Kelly. And I know that's what you're driving at too. So
no, I'm not driving at the hack. I'm saying that that's the hack. And that's the part that most people, Corey, won't talk about. They won't talk about the fact that Corey did 4 years, 20 years, 25 years of work that you never saw to be able to get the 15 minutes that you saw, that you just want the 15 minutes, but you're not willing to put the 20 years in.
You know what? It's wild about that. At the Secret Knock, And ever since I heard his talk, he changed his talk. He never used to talk about this, and he changed it. And ever since that talk, I've been talking about this, which just tells me he's on the right track with this new talk, is our I think, mutual friend, Anthony Trucks. And so Anthony, I think, was like one of the opening keynotes of the event.
Yeah.
And Anthony said this thing about, paraphrase, nobody sees the work that you have to do in the dark to see the result in the light. Yeah. Something to the effect of that. And I've been lately talking a lot about the dark work, like the work I've been doing nobody sees. A great example, Kelly, and I will come back to I'm going to give you a hack, though. I'm going to be people, I promise. Hold up, I'm going to give you a hack, but I have to share the story. We talked about storytelling. Stories matter. And I did right after the secret knock, I went to Hay House. And I'm not going to say the name. I'll tell you if you want off air, but I booked 3 interviews. One was with Mark, Victor Hansen, and Crystal. They live in Arizona, but that was at a different location. Then I had to book 2 other speakers, and I had to book them closer to the event where Hayes was at. And so I booked this venue, sight unseen, but I seen all the pictures, and it looked amazing. And I got there, and I drove past it twice because I'm like, oh, that can't be it. I must have the address wrong. And the place that we got to was like this. The yard was like gravel and dirt, and then the guy was sitting at the step, rocking on a rocking chair with a piece of straw hanging in his mouth, and he had a pit bull next to him growling. That was where I was sending these 2 big name influencers to do the interviews. And so I went in, and he was a nice guy. I went in, and it was like a whole warehouse, dirt on the floor all over the place, bugs flying around. Anyway, my point is if I hadn't built a relationship with them before, I'm sure they would have turned around and got back in the car and drove away. But we did it. At the end of the day, and not only did we do it, but I met them both at the conference, and one of them talked about me from the stage, and the other one said, on the way back, and again, I won't say who it is, but he said, Corey, Jack Canfield and John Gray, and he named 4 or 5 people, helped me on my journey. And he said, so whatever you need from me, you let me know, and I'm there. Wow. And what I'm saying, Kelly, is the dark work, though, this is the point of that story. The dark work was showing up at that venue, realizing I'm inviting them to that place. And I talk about my coin I carry around, says E plus R equals O, which is the event you can't change, but response you can, which will dictate your outcome. I carry I have them here, actually. So I carry this poker chip around. See if I can get this in here. E plus R equals O. And then another one, PMA, which stands for Positive Mental Attitude. Now, Greg Reed talks about this book a lot, Success Through a Positive Mental Attitude. But the invisible talisman they talk in the book says NMA on the other side. So PMA is positive, NMA is negative. Well, I decided I don't want to carry negative around with me. So I just put positive on both sides. My point is, I have these in my pocket. And so the girl that was traveling with me said, what are we going to do about the venue I told you about? I just said, E plus R equals O. I can't change this. So I'm going to give them a heads up. When they get here, I'm going to make sure they're okay with it. And we're going to create the outcome we want. And that's what happened. So that's the dark work, though, right? Nobody saw me running down the street. Same day, by the way, suitcase that the zipper broke, carrying the suitcase as I'm running like this, because we found out one of the people, we tried to schedule a different place and they didn't get the text. So they went to that place anyway. We had to turn around, get in the car, drive back to the venue while they're sitting there for a half hour waiting for us. That's the dark work, Kelly. So that's the stuff that's the shortcut, is doing that work. Having said that, I do want to give people a hack because I think that's important too. And here's the hack. The hack is, and this is what we do with Blue Talks, it is a shortcut, is if you can find somebody, however this is, that can get you on the platform sooner or introduce you to the platform sooner. And when I say platforms, I'm saying the positioning, like having the media, like when I see you in the Success magazine. In fact, I think we're both in the same one here, which is the one where I think I told you about, but I was in it for the Success Emerging Entrepreneurs. Actually, I just opened the page and it's
right on.
But then there's somewhere else. I won't spend the time going through page by page, but there's another place, everybody, that Kelly's at on the Success Speakers Bureau. And so what I'm saying is that's, you being in there is positioning. When somebody sees you in there next to Mel Robbins and all the other names, that's positioning. So to me, if you have enough of that stuff, people trust you. You're vetted by the media. And so the shortcut is figuring out how to get vetted by the media sooner and get those achievements sooner so that you become positioned as the expert sooner. Now, there's 2 ways to do that. One is you can do it in real time. You can actually do the work, and maybe you submit to, I'm talking out loud, I don't recommend this because we can make it this easier for you, but submit to 500 TEDx's. Just go all in, every TEDx you can find that's looking, and eventually you'll get one. That's true. Now, you might put that 150 hours into it versus hiring somebody to help you that knows the system and make it quicker. But my point is that'll still work. You can still submit to Success Magazine every month for the next 3 years. I don't know if that's a shortcut, but I'm saying you can still do that. So you could do that, or you could go to somebody who's already done it and they have the contact. So in our case with Blue Talks, I jokingly say that, but it's true. We see people that we work with have the same achievements as me in 3 months that took me 15 years in real time. And it's not manipulated. They're not even paying for the achievements. We have a package they sign up for to help them become positioned as an expert, but they're not even paying for the stuff they're doing. So what I'm getting at is, this is an example. If somebody works with us for 4 months, they could literally have a video of them speaking at an event on site at MIT or Columbia or Harvard or UCLA. They could have a video because we put it out to Apple TV, Roku, Amazon, Connect TV, and a bunch of other places. So now they can have a banner saying they're featured in those places. Our book series, often we have you got to get your forward to us. We have a forward by a thought leader. So the latest one, the one coming up, is with the late Bob Proctor. So an interview I did with him, and I've got permission from his widow and his son to do a forward. So imagine being able to say you were in a book with the late Bob Proctor. So what I'm saying is you get a chapter in our book. We actually get it to the Amazon and Barnes & Noble bestseller list. Legit, we get it there, not manipulate it. And so now you could say you're an Amazon and Barnes & Noble bestselling author. And then we feature on our podcast. One of our networks we're on is AM FM 247, has 22 FM stations, over 2 million listeners. So what I'm saying, Kelly, is that's a shortcut. Somebody comes working with us and in 4 months, their website looks like that versus not looking like that. The third option, which nobody wants to talk about, and I was impressed with you and Greg talking about it from the Secret Knock stage, is pay to play. Nobody wants to acknowledge this is happening, but there are people right now paying to be positioned in media whenever you are not being positioned in media, whether you're not trying or whether you're not doing, investing or whatever that looks like. But there's people not paying and not getting featured. My looking at it again is that person that's willing to invest, they're still impacting lives that I'm not impacting if they invest and get that spot that I didn't. Now, the one thing that made me make peace with it, because a lot of people don't want to know that people are paying for the spots to be featured in wherever, Forbes or whatever. But here's the thing that made me realize we need to change our thinking on that. First of all, it's all across the board now. So it's either you get left out or you at least consider it. But the second thing is that not what advertisers have been doing since the beginning of time? It just doesn't have as much credibility. But if you're running a full page ad showing you speaking at a venue, and it's an ad for the event, but it also positions you as the expert, is that not pay to play? Or I just saw Robert Kiyosaki's new book in the, American Airlines, I think it is, magazine. And it's a full page ad run by, I think it's Wiley Books and Robert Kiyosaki. Well, what I'm saying is that that's an ad, no question, but is that not positioning Robert Kiyosaki as the expert when you see a full page ad for his new book? So to me, it's already been happening. You go to the billboards, right? Billboards, every person on that billboard in some way has to pay. The only people that are kind of getting on without paying are actors who are in a movie and the movie's paying for it. So I think we need to change our thoughts on that, Kelly. It's another shortcut. The catch is it's the shortcut, but we all know one of two things. Either you have to pay in time or pay in investment. And so the catch 22 is you might not have the money to invest in the big media. So you may have to do it in the trenches yourself. I will give people one hack that is free, and you could do this in 2 weeks if you're willing to roll up your sleeves, is get on 20 podcasts or 10 podcasts, small ones. It doesn't matter if I know how big they are. There's lots of websites you can go that every day put out a list of 5 podcasts looking for guests. So get yourself booked on to 10 podcasts, which will cost you nothing. Some, by the way, are charging even podcasts now, but get yourself on 10 that aren't charging and then ask for their logos and if you can use them. And then what you can do is you can create an as seen on banner with those 10 podcast logos, podcasts that nobody knows about, but still in our mind, when we see as seen on, we think they're probably big shows. We think you are vetted. So you get yourself that banner, you start positioning that on your website. It builds credibility. And then as you get the bigger names, you just swap them out. So eventually you have Forbes, Entrepreneur, Success, what have you. But that's a hack you can start doing today without spending any money. But that's a long answer, but I think those are a lot of the different ways if you want to shortcut, how do you become the go-to expert earlier?
Corey, I tell you, I could stay here with you for all of time, but I got to respect your time. I started the podcast because of 2 kids. Every single person out there, you need to go to the bio and you need to check out all of Corey's stuff, especially the Enlightened Passenger. It's coming out very soon. It's going to have a foreword in there by a bro that you know. So Corey's been on me about this, but you know that I started the podcast because of my 2 kids, Maddox and McKenna. What advice would you give to Maddox and McKenna? And if you could call yourself Uncle Corey, it would be awesome.
Okay. So this is going to be, and it's not intended to be a plug, but I'm going to explain it. I'm explaining it and then I'll give the advice. And I know we're near the end. So if you want me to tell people even a little bit about the Enlightened Passenger as well, because I'm really excited about this too. But let's talk first advice. So what Uncle Corey would say, and the reason I tied on to the book is because I wrote the book to be the advice I wish my kids had, meaning they can read the book for the rest of their life and get these insights. So I'll give the advice, but I'll say the book is hopefully filled with 10 lessons that could change people's lives. But here's what's unique about the book is it's a fictional book based on my experience in life. So all the 7,500 interviews I did, they seeped their way into the book, and I actually dropped the names of people I learned the lesson from, as if the character learned a lesson from them. So I want to, clarify to people, I wrote this book to be the book that I wish I had when I was a kid. So the advice I would give to your 2 little ones, Kelly, is that I would say, well, there's a whole bunch, but I would say the one that pops out in my head, because I always got to go with gut instinct, because again, there's 10 insights in the book. But I would say the one that pops out in my head, and this one, I can give the strategy around it if you want, but the other side is I can share this one. And if you need one with a strategy, I can do a second one. But the one I would say is crucial is to figure out, no matter what it takes, a way to live your life on purpose every day. So part of that involves figuring out what your purpose really is. So what is your purpose? So figuring that out. And by the way, the gateway to that is finding a passion, in my experience. But find your purpose, your calling, what you're called to do, your meaning, your why, whatever word you want to put on it, and live every day like that. There's a great quote by Bob Dylan, and he said to him, and I'm paraphrasing, to him, success is when a man, and I'll add, or a woman, because back then the quotes were always men, or a woman wakes up every day and goes to sleep every night, and in between, he or she does that which they love. That's success. To me, when you're doing that with your purpose, which Bob Dylan is, right? Writing music, playing music, sharing his message with the world. When you're doing that every day, there's no feeling that I can't even, here's the crappy part, Kelly. To somebody who doesn't feel this, I can't even explain how it feels because it's bigger than almost anything I've ever felt. So the best way I describe it to people, and I don't even know if this does it justice, is I'm like, every day when I wake up, I'm like that little kid at Christmas that actually loves Christmas. You know that kid that goes berserkers? So I say this because some people don't love Christmas, and I understand why, and I understand that. But that kid that goes bonkers and won't go to sleep, and then when he does, he cartwheels downstairs, he falls trying to get to his gifts. That kid, that's how I feel every day. So my question is, would it be worth doing a little bit of work to figure out how to feel like that? And to me, the great part is the work isn't even work, because when we teach people the exercise, we'll say, list the things you'd like to do if money was an issue. List the things you do now and you don't watch the clock. List the things that when you were a kid and people stopped you doing it, you wanted to keep doing it, but you didn't. List the thing you would do if you went to a desert island to retire and then came back. And list all those things. And chances are, and those are usually your passions, like I like photography, I like playing music or what have you. You find those and then you literally spend time doing them. Do the first one on the list. And eventually, if it's a purpose or a passion even, it'll reveal itself. Now, I say this because you put a list of things you love doing. So who cares if you spend 3 months doing it? You said you love it. I will say, if you're asking how do I get paid to do it, it's not truly a passion. But if you keep doing it, eventually the way to get paid to do it will reveal itself. So that's what I would say to your children is if they haven't already figured out passions they like, which I think your kids probably have, but if they haven't, then they have to figure out why they like doing it eventually so that they can spend every day doing it. If you can spend every day living on purpose, game over. You figured out life. People say, what's the meaning of life? In my opinion, that's it. Now, there's probably a bigger reason as to why we were put here to find that. I'm not wise enough for that yet, but I think we were put here to live on purpose every day, to figure out what it is and to live that way. And so that would be my advice is figure that out. I'd like to think the book gives you some hacks and hints to that, but that's one of 10 lessons. So I would say live on purpose. Oh, I got to add too. I'll make the case for why you should do that. There's a book called The Blue Zones. There's a documentary around it on Netflix. I think it's a 4-part series. The Blue Zones were studies done by Dan Botner rather, commissioned through National Geographic over 25 years. And Dan studied the longest living people and then separately the happiest people. And here's what I find fascinating, Kelly. In both of those books, it's a list of 9, I believe, and there's only one that overlaps fully. And it's the fact that these people live with meaning and live on purpose.
There we go.
So that would be my vote.
Uncle Corey, you are absolutely phenomenal. I can't wait to have you on the show again. I can't wait to be at Blue Talks, the next one. Hopefully we'll do one in Vegas right after Vegas Secret Knock. You have been way better than advertised all the time. I want to thank you. And I want to tell you, man, that just like Mark Victor Hansen was talking about, if there's anything that we can do to be able to further the message of Corey, we believe in you at the highest level. And because I've experienced your dark work. I've experienced the things that you won't be willing to shout out, like helping my daughter to be able to be in a play that doesn't even align with, writing a book, but you did it because it was the right thing in your heart, man. And I want to tell you that. And with that, you're officially off the hot seat.